All right, guys, we are live, and I just want to welcome everybody to tonight's webinar, our Strengthening for Runners webinar, going to be presented by Denise Smith, who is a physically trained physical therapist and is doing some really great work here in the Chicagoland area. I've had the pleasure of knowing Denise for 2 years now, and we've worked closely together on several projects, and I'm really honored to call her a friend as well. So Denise, thanks so much for joining us tonight.
Well, I appreciate you inviting me on. Thank you.
Absolutely. So for those of you, a few housekeeping items. Tonight, the webinar, you are going to be muted, your line. So if you have a question or a comment, you're going to see a chat box there. And I think all of us have used it by now. If you have a question, Denise, whether it's during the webinar presentation or at the end, go ahead and type your questions in there. And Denise also has left her contact information on the last slide. So you know what, if you get to tomorrow or next week and you're like, I really wanted to ask Denise this, then her contact information is going to be on there. But she's going to be presenting tonight on really strength training for runners and why it's important. And us runners, we just want to run. We love running for the most part, right? Probably maybe not as much during the initial parts of the training, but we want to run and we want to get out there. We want to put the miles in. But as we age, certainly it's important to do the ancillary work, that the warming up and the cooling down and the strength training. Make sure that we stay healthy and we can stay consistent and keep running. So in my opinion, and I know Denise feels the same, strength training is just as important as running itself. So I'm going to go ahead, guys. I'm going to share my screen here. Share this. And then Denise, I am going to turn it over to you. Can everybody see the screen? Denise, can you see that?
I can.
Perfect. Okay, Denise, all you.
So I think I can ask this question. How many of you, so it looks like there's 7 of you guys on right now, 8. How many of you guys are currently strength training? If you just want to I don't know, can you raise your hand on here or just shout out a yes or no? Chris says no. Kelly says yes. Kelly, Katie says a little. Thanks, Seth. You better be strength training. So for those of you that said yes, I think that was Katie and Kelly. How many times a week do you guys strength train? The reason I'm asking, once or twice, Kelly says. Jen says 2 times a week. Awesome. The reason I'm asking is it sometimes seems very daunting when you are in the process of training for a marathon to add more to your schedule. And so my clients will come in to see me and I'll ask them, how much do you strength train? And they'll say a variety of what you guys said. Yes, a little bit, 2 times, once or twice. And I make them up their strength training and they look at me like, why are you adding more to my life? And so I'll usually tell them there is a reason why you need to be strong enough to be able to perform. If you're not, that's when injuries happen. And it's not that you didn't train enough. It's not that you didn't run enough miles. It's that your muscles weren't able to support what you were asking them to do. So that's why the strengthening for runners is so important. So as we go through the slides, oh, and good, Katie does yoga too. That's awesome. Good for recovery. No runner likes the word rest day. So that's why I like yoga, because those can be recovery days. But that's a topic for another webinar. So let's start going through the slides. I think you advance them, right, Seth?
I do. Let me get this in present mode. There we go.
Thank you. So all of my runners come in and say, well, I am running, so I'm strength training. And the thing I say all the time is running is not the same thing as strength training. So your body needs to be able to withstand everything that comes from running. So when we run, our body has to absorb 2 to 3 times our body weight. And so you have that additional weight, gravity, and then the worst force that acts on us is ground reaction force. And I cried my way through physics, but ground reaction force is an equal and opposite reaction for coming from the ground as we land on it. So if we do all the things right, things like gravity can actually help us. But if we don't use it right, things like ground reaction force will actually hurt us because it will take its toll. And what you'll hear is a familiar term called overuse injuries. And doctors like to use that when they don't really understand why an injury occurred. So I would just like everyone to stop using the term overuse, because there's not some magic number that we all hit and suddenly like, oh, you ran your 102nd mile. Now your body's going to start breaking down. I think it's actually more of a misuse. So if we can get people stronger, we'll notice that their injury rates start coming down and they can be faster and run longer because now their body is able to tolerate the forces that are being placed on them. Thank you. So you might have to advance it like 2 or 3. There's a couple pictures that go on here, sorry. You'll see in that first picture there where she's laying on her stomach, that is a version of an isolated strengthening. So that's a hamstring curl. I think those are awesome because they work a very key muscle group that runners undertrain, but that's not very functional. You can see that's not a very functional position. We as runners don't do anything in that position when we are running. Functional strengthening is what the next picture is, which is more like squats. Things we do in our everyday life when we're picking up a bag of dog food or our kids off the floor. But I think to be a well-rounded runner, you need a combination of the two. So the next picture is just one that I think is super cute, but this is where functional things that we have to do every day can be combined with isolated strengthening and make it fun. So yes, not every runner has to worry about lifting their kid on the floor, but using balls to isolate as well as weights, things like that. That's what we're going to start looking at. The key muscle groups are your hips, your hamstrings, and your core. You can strength train this idea of muscle elasticity, which is a force that acts on our body. Muscle elasticity is that springiness that we all have in our step. You know, if I tell you to run in place, if you all get up right now and run in place, you all have a very similar rhythm, and that rhythm needs to be trained. So strengthening that to your advantage is key. And so we do this by working on things like squats. Every runner says, why do I need to do squats? Well, there's a reason. Hops and jumps address the muscle elasticity. Your abs and back, along with squats and some push-ups, strengthen your core. So your core is really anything from your shoulders to your knees, not just your abs. Ripped abs does not mean you have a strong core. And then my favorite exercise are hip dips, which we will get to. All of these are important because they help support our body weight when we're running. So squats, let's talk about squats real quick. There's a lot of misconception about the right way to do squats. You'll see this typical picture that Seth just put up where it will give instructions to actually put your weight on your heels. But I don't know if anyone is able to do this right now. If you're in the comfort of your own home, get into a squat similar like him, put all of the weight on your heels, and then lean back just slightly. What are you going to think is going to happen? You're probably going to fall on your tush. So now get in that same position, but put the weight on the front half of your foot. Seth, can you advance it for me? One more. So look at this little kid. He could sit there all day and perform a squat in that position. Sorry, Seth.
Oh, guys.
He could sit in this position all day and be fine. But the guy on the left, if he starts trying to move his body weight at all backwards or has weight on him with a rack and loses his balance, he's going straight back. And that puts a lot of force on your knees. So we're really working on trying to change the way people are learning how to squat and getting their weight on the front half of their foot. Their butt still goes back so that the knees don't come over the toes, but really being a little more light on your feet and ready to change directions if need be and not be, you know, with this term, sitting on your heels. We don't want you sitting on your heels. We want you ready to go.
Denise, can I ask a question on this?
Yeah.
Do you find that a lot of people don't have the proper ankle and hip mobility to do a proper squat?
Probably more ankle mobility than hip mobility. So yes, there is mobility work that we want people to do to maintain this. We'll sometimes cheat if people are like, I just can't get there. I'll tell them to put like a block underneath their heels or a weight. And that's a little cheating strategy to see if you can actually get in that position, but you just need to work on the mobility of your ankles. So yes, good question. So why do we want squats? Well, if you look at squats, when you have to absorb 2 to 3 times your body weight, your leg has to support that. And squatting mimics that position of your leg landing underneath your body weight. So it can be a mini squat. It could be a deep overhead squat like you're seeing. There are hundreds of different ways to do squats, but we just want to start training your body that it will understand how to keep the weight on the ball of your foot, that front half of your foot, that mimics some of those key running positions when you're landing. So like I said, go ahead and Google. You will see hundreds of ways to do squats. I'm fine with all of them as long as we can get the weight on the front half of your foot and your butt goes back so that we're maintaining good leverage on your knees. And so any questions on squats? If you get knee pain with squatting, go ahead and shoot a question if you have one. But if you get any knee pain with squatting, the usually thing I start with is get in an athletic stance. So think about the ready position for golf, for football, for basketball, for volleyball. Get in that ready position. I call that the springness position. Get in that position and then perform a squat right from there without allowing your weight to shift back onto your heels. Okay, so hops and jumps. This is very important to train that elasticity that I was talking about. So if anyone wants to try this, stand up wherever you're at and run in place. And you'll see that most of you will automatically pick a pace of about 180 steps per minute. Something happens from when we run in place to when we start running, we slow that cadence down. And research has showed that cadence is a very springy feeling. And that cadence of about 180 beats or steps per minute is where the body is the happiest because it's the least amount of time on impact. So the quicker I get you on and off your feet, the better you are. And 180 is right about the minimum of where you should be. Any faster than that is great, but as a distance runner, you'll probably be somewhere between 120 or 180 and 200. And that, again, harnesses this elasticity. Now, this elasticity comes from a neurological component, and so training it through things like box jumps, jumping rope, and standing on a step. You'll that last picture of me where I'm standing on a step and I'm pulling my foot up as quickly as I can. So it goes down, and then I pull it up. Down, pull, 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 using an ankle weight to make it a little bit harder. That helps with that rhythmic pattern of every time my foot lands to pull and harnessing some of that elasticity that's there. Does anybody currently do jump roping as part of their workout or box jumps? And box jumps sometimes can be a little bit scary. At the gym I work out at, it's a metal box, and if I miss it, because I've now gone, maybe I'm trying to do a 12-inch box jump and I'm trying to now do it on one leg, I might miss it and nail my shin. So a good place to start trying box jumps are see if anyone has the soft boxes or even on your stairs at home. It's a little less embarrassing to nail your shin and it doesn't hurt quite as bad. But don't be afraid to try box jumps. Start with a curb. Curbs are usually between, 2 and 6 inches. So it's a really good place to just start it. And sometimes if you miss, you'll land on the grass. So don't be afraid of box jumps and do both legs and do one leg. Get used to harnessing that springiness that our body wants us to have. Ab and back strength are part of your core. So it's really important that we keep our core strong. Our core connects the top and bottom, so our shoulder and our hips. And that's why we say your core is really anything from your shoulders to your knees. So letting those two be connected through this important system is part of preventing injury. What we want to do is make your spine stable, so helping things co-contract, abs and low back working together. So a lot of runners will work on their abs, but they won't necessarily work on their back. So these are just 2 examples of some easy ab strengthening ones that you could do if you don't have equipment, you're doing this in your own home. I want you guys to be able to add things. So you can do these supine leg raises where my legs go straight out from my body, and then using my abs, I pull my legs up towards my head. Now, I didn't show that sometimes your legs can go all the way down to the floor. You don't want your back arching. So if you feel like you can't control it, bring your legs just about halfway like mine are, and then bring them back up. And then prone extensions are where you're laying on the ground and you're lifting your upper body and your lower body at the same time. Be careful if you have low back pain with this. If there's a local physical therapist in your town, sometimes asking them alternatives to some low back strengthening. Using a ball is great, BOSU, things that you can put under your stomach to help you. Push-ups, my other favorite exercise that next to hip dips, which we'll get to in a minute, push-ups are the one exercise that runners can do very easily without equipment, but don't do enough. So for those of you that are sitting in a chair right now, I want you to raise your right hand over your head and keep that hand up in the air. What you're going to do is shove your right hand up in the air and your shoulder should come up, but you should also notice that your hip comes up a little bit. So you can see how your shoulder and your hips are connected. So keeping that strong is important. So keeping those shoulders developed will help activate your lats, which then connect to your hip. And that movement is really important because why make your lower body do all the work? Let your shoulders be there to help it because they have this connection to your hip through your lats. So things like push-ups, lat pull downs, all of those things are very, very important because it helps take the weight off of your lower body. So a lot of women will have problems doing a proper push-up. They'll have like their chest will follow their hips and they look a little discombobulated. Start with a push-up on a wall. Start with it on a bench or on your knees. Do it the right way to help you. Don't just try to muster your way through it and hurt yourself. On my YouTube channel, which is just Smith Physical Therapy and Running Academy, there's a 30-day strengthening challenge. And under that 30-day strengthening challenge, there's a ton of different ways to do push-ups. But using push-ups, squats, and hip dips, you can really develop some key muscle groups without any weight, without any need for a gym, and make a big change in your running form. And I think push-ups are a very easy way that we can start training our body to learn how to move through the air without trying to push off the ground. So a lot of runners make the mistake of trying to push down off the ground when they're running, but really they could be thinking about pulling through their hamstring, pulling through their shoulder, pulling their foot up off the ground is way easier than pushing. So again, that's probably a discussion for another day of how we sometimes have bad form because of bad cues that we've received. But this idea of pulling everything is much easier than pushing in this situation. Oh yeah, my Chuck Norris pictures. We always say the only person that does, most of us do push-ups. Chuck Norris is probably the only person that can do push-downs, the only guy who could probably push the earth down, while the rest of us push our bodies away. So,
very nice.
Yeah, gotta always put a Chuck Norris joke in there. Okay, here we are at my favorite strengthening exercise. If you guys take nothing out from this talk except the role of a hip dip, then I will die a happy lady. Hip dips, also on my YouTube channel, you will see these variations of hip dips. If I can challenge you all to do 30 hip dips for 30 days, I promise you will see changes in your running. Hip dips work for two things. One, they help get mobility that most of us are missing through our hip. But the other thing it does is it helps our body understand where our hips should be when we're running, which is forward. Too many of us leave our hips back when we're running, so we almost try to bend at the waist, or you're running with your butt out. So keeping everything in alignment. This hip dip is a really good job for training our brain about keeping our hips forward when we run. For those of you that have heard about the pose method, this is the falling or the fall angle. For those of you that maybe have done some chi running, this is the chi, that lean forward. So really bringing attention to your midsection, your hips, to get them in alignment for where they should be. But this also works on hip strengthening. So the most common one is the one you'll see on the left there, the face down hip dip. Again, on my YouTube channel is an explanation of how to do them, but my hands and my feet are about shoulder width apart. I put my butt up into a pike and then I bring my butt down. So butt up, butt down, butt up, butt down. That's a hip dip. An alternative is going face up, which I think is way harder. For those of you that are at home right now, try these. So you are hands behind you, feet out in front of you, both about shoulder width apart. Bring your butt up, butt down, butt up, down. And if that seems easy, try lifting your leg up in the air or lift your leg out to the side and see how much it changes with bringing your leg out to the side. You can get super fancy and bring your one arm up while you've got both feet down. When you're face down, you could bring one arm up and one arm down, or one arm and one leg. You can put your feet on a step. You can put your feet on a bench, hands on the step or bench. So lots of different ways to challenge yourself with this hip dip. So check out my YouTube channel and you'll see a lot of these variations on there. But hands down, my favorite strengthening for runners. You'll see I do shout outs to them all the time on Instagram, different ways you can do them. Does anybody currently focus on their hips when they're strength training, or do most of you guys? So Brian said 30-day challenge accepted. Great. So Brian, if you're willing to do the 30-day hip dip challenge for me, if you can take a video of yourself doing your first hip dip, do an opposite arm and leg. So maybe right arm and left leg hip dip. Film yourself with how many you can do. I'm going to guess you might be able to get between 0 and 4 that you're doing full butt up and butt down. Film it on both sides. And then in 30 days, practice all kinds of hip dips. And then in 30 days, try the opposite arm and leg one again and see if it changes. And then just post it on Instagram or Facebook and shout out like, all right, I did get stronger. The 30-day challenge worked, or it didn't. So anybody can do a 30-day hip dip challenge. Because again, it doesn't require equipment. You just need to be willing to sweat a little bit and be willing to try hip dips in different positions. So it's awesome. He's currently using elastic bands and been doing some squat walking to keep his knees apart. That's great too. That's a great way to work on your hips. Those are some of our favorite PT exercises where we have you guys in a squat and you laterally walk, or you'll do what we call the monster walk or the diagonal walk. Those are awesome as well for strengthening your hips. So love that you're doing those. So keep at it. I did give you a little progression challenge here. This first slide shows how to progress it. So sit and do a couple of these in one set, or I actually do it for 30 seconds because it's easier for me to do that. In 30 seconds, how many push-ups can I do? In 30 seconds, how many single leg squats can I do on the right versus the left? How many opposite arm and leg hip dips can I do? And how many single leg box jumps can I do? And I record those numbers. For 4 weeks or 30 days, I would like you to try rotating varieties of these exercises, adding weight, increasing your reps, whatever you want to do, 3 times a week for strength training. Again, I purposely tried to pick ones that you didn't need a gym membership to do. If you have a gym membership, great. You'll be able to progress a little more with a little more effort because you can add weight. But for those of you that don't, that's why you can vary positions or vary reps. And then after 4 weeks, reassess everything. Same thing, 30 seconds. How many of each of these can you do? The next page shows an assessment I just made on Excel. So I can send this to Seth if you guys want. But in that 30 seconds, how many reps of all of these can you do? Take notes on it, like I could only do 4 hip dips on opposite arm and leg, and it was not pretty. I fell over, or did something hurt? Did your knee hurt? Whatever the note is, just keep track of that, and then 4 weeks later, do the same thing. So I can send this out to everybody if they want that. But you can make up your own assessment. You know, pick 4 exercises that you feel would help you as a runner. Mark them down, do as many reps as you can in one set, keep track of it, work on it for 4 weeks, and then do it again. Sometimes we need to see our growth as runners to understand the role of strengthening, because too often we rely on our mileage to tell us where we are as a runner. And if you have a bad week, like it was raining or you had to work late or your kids were sick, sometimes you don't get your miles in and you feel like, oh my God, I'm so behind on my training. Well, maybe not, because your kid was sick, you were able to get some really good strengthening done at home while they were napping. Things you wouldn't have been able to focus on, push-ups, maybe some squats. And actually you go back to run the next week and you actually feel better. So strength training can help us in ways that we sometimes undervalue, but can give us the empowerment we need to keep pushing ourselves. And maybe then that next week, the miles don't seem quite as hard. So people ask all the time about these next questions. That's why I included it in here. I recommend always trying to change your strength training every week, either by mixing it up in what exercises you're doing, how many reps you're doing, how much weight you're adding. And you can do that variety up until about 1 week prior to your event. You know, Seth does a great job about teaching you guys not to add too many things prior to race day. And you don't want to be super sore leading into race day that may affect your performance. So that's why I always say about a 1 week stoppage before you changing anything with your strength training program. Because you guys are short on time, using things like speed workout, flexibility, or training your technique in as an alternate to strength training, you'll just notice that you start feeling better during your runs. So even if you can't give me 3 days of strength training, you might be able to do 2 days of strength training and one speed day. And really giving your body that variety, you'll notice a big difference in your injury prevention. And the last topic is soreness versus pain. Always says, well, when I'm strength training, I'm really sore about 2 days after I did it, and I can't even walk. I did too much. Well, no, actually, you did just the right amount. You should be sore for about a day or two after you work out, and then it should start subsiding. You might be sore when you first get up, but once you get walking, it feels fine. Or that first day you go down the stairs, you might be like, ouch, thighs hurt. But then as you get moving, as the day goes on, it feels great. That is actually okay. But if it's the pain starts lingering like 3, 4, 5 days, you definitely did too much and you probably did something wrong because now the tendons are talking back to you. So again, it wasn't misuse. You didn't do too many squats. You just did them the wrong way. And so that's where you can always use me as a resource, or talk to your local physical therapist. A lot of us do complementary injury screens or discovery sessions where we'll look to make sure you're doing this the right way, just to help you stay on track. So if you do something and your ankle is really, really sore, you've got a muscle in your ankle that's really sore, and you go down the stairs and that hurts. And then 2 days later, it still hurts when you go downstairs. Maybe 5 days later, there's probably something wrong. But if the muscle is sore versus the joint, that's usually an indicator that everything's okay. But if the joint is hurting, the joint line hurts, that's where you may want to look at, is something happening? And then, like I said, is it getting better after 2 or 3 days? Is it decreasing over time? Then great, you're doing just fine. It was just sore from using it. And I think that's all I had for you. My contact info, I think, I'm not sure if it's on the next page. I can't remember, but oh, haha, look at that. So, anything I can do to help you guys, our social media channel, our social media. I'm not very good on Twitter anymore. I should probably take that off. I cannot keep up with Twitter. It happens too fast for me when I'm working on patients all day. But we do try to keep up our Instagram page with strength training tips, Facebook and YouTube. We're really working on, especially YouTube, putting as much educational stuff on there as we can to help you guys. So I think this week we added 63 videos onto our YouTube channel about technique hints, about strength training, about the role of all of this. And we're in the middle of a YouTube series right now, some running tips. So just helping you guys understand the role of all these things that make you a really healthy runner. So if you have any questions, my email's there. Shoot me an email. On the previous page, you'll see that I created a discount code if anyone wants to use it for some running technique tips. We really believe that when you guys know how to run better by understanding where your body should be, that you will perform better and your injury rates will go down. So if anyone is interested in doing virtual running technique training or teaching, we do that. We have virtual sessions that we can do. So just mention Seth's name and we'll give you 20% off the price. But again, my email that's on that next slide, use it. I'm here to help. I'm a resource. You are very lucky to have Seth as a coach. Like he said, he's become a very good friend, and I appreciate everything he does for you guys. He's one of the few coaches out there that incorporates a well-rounded approach. And that's why I love working with Seth so much, is that he does not just make you run empty miles. He makes them meaningful miles and includes things like recovery days, strength training into your workout routine. So he's not just doing it to provide lip service. He actually believes in what he does and he performs it himself. So, so thanks, Seth, for doing that for our runners.
Thanks, Denise. I've been doing hip dips the last 15 minutes of your.
Sweet.
No, I appreciate the kind words, and I think I think the one of the main points we can take from this great information that Denise presented tonight is maybe you haven't started strength training, you know that you should, or maybe you're doing it once a week or twice a week. We can always do a little bit more, right? So um, the challenge has been issued. There's a 30-day challenge. If you've been wondering, and if maybe the routines that I sent out with the training programs aren't for you, check out Denise's YouTube page. She has a lot of great resources on there, and again, there's the strength. There's a lot of information on strength training, but there's this 30-day challenge. So if you were wondering where to start, something as simple as the 30-day challenge would be a great place to start. But and the last thing that I'll say is, I was listening to, and I think this is something that we can all take away. I was listening to an interview earlier this week with Des Linden, the 2018 Women's Boston Marathon champion, and she described kind of like her feelings and emotions after the 2017 Boston Marathon and how she was contemplating retiring. And then when she was looking to get back into training, her motto or her mantra was really just every day, just show up, whether or not she felt like it or not, because, right, we're all going to have days where we don't feel like running. The last thing we want to do is spend an extra 10 to 15 minutes strength training on top of a 8-mile run or a 15-mile long run. But just do the best you can. Just show up that day and give your best effort on that day. And that's going to vary from one day to the next. So I think all the information that Denise has presented is certainly relevant and can really have a great impact on your miles that you put on. Because the only way that we're going to get to where we want to go come this fall, October, November, or whenever your race is if we can stay consistent. And we stay consistent by staying healthy, and really strength training is insurance against injury. So, and I know Denise feels the same. So I want to leave these last couple minutes open for questions or comments. So if anybody does have any questions or wants to chat with Denise or myself, go ahead and type that in the chat box, and we'll be sure to get those questions answered.
Seth, so the hip dips, I think I've had you do a couple of varieties of hip dips. Have you done the opposite arm and leg one?
Yes, and I find it's challenging.
The first time I did it, I think I fell over. But if anyone has little kids, make them do it and watch how easily they do it.
Oh, it's amazing. It's amazing. Yeah, they're amazing. Kids are amazing before they start sitting all day, and they're amazing athletes.
Yes.
So any questions out there, guys?
And if not, if you think of something later on, you can always just shoot me an email or message me through social media, because I know sometimes you'll get started on your strength training program and then have questions. I'm always available to answer any of that stuff, or Seth knows how to get a hold of me if you have questions that pop up later on.
Yeah. Especially I would be mindful of how you progress through your strength training, where to start. If you're not really strength training now or don't have a long history of strength training, it's best to start with your body weight, which Denise covered. And I always recommend, and I think you guys have read this in your programs, is that we want to do our strength training after our runs. The runs are, of course, our primary workouts throughout a training cycle for the marathon. So we don't want our strength training to take away from the quality of the runs. So on days where we are both running and strength training, we want to go ahead and do that strength training after our runs. But it looks like Denise, Brian has a question. He says, how do I stay active when I work at a desk? I work in accounting.
It's hard, there's so I don't know if your employer will allow you to get a stand-up desk, or depending on where your office is, if you have clients walking through, sometimes if they'd allow it, just even bringing one of those exercise balls to work. Sitting on an exercise ball puts us in a really good spinal alignment, but it also allows us to get input through our feet and our hips in a way that you can be shifting your weight side to side, rolling your hips back and forth, and working your core without even leaving your desk. I love when people get up every hour just to even go walk and get some water and come back. Take the stairs when you can at work. There are times when I'll be on a conference call. I'm not doing it right now, but if I'm on one of these long-winded conference calls, I'll be doing squats, just standing there because my life these days with kids and work is sometimes crazy. And there's days I don't even get a workout in. And so trying to just do these little pieces when I can, or brushing my teeth. I do a lot when I brush my teeth, just to at least get moving because I'm so tired of sitting all day. And so it's a challenge that I feel you guys, especially people that have to commute to work, that you drive all the way to work, you sit for an hour in the car, then you sit all day at work, and then you drive an hour back sitting, and then you go home and sit on the couch. It is not good. And so trying to just find little things to do, stairs, parking far away in the lot, things like that, walking to the train instead of driving, whenever you can, are some tips.
I agree with all that. And then, Brian, one resource I would say to maybe check out is there's a great book out there by Dr. Kelly Starrett called Desk Bound. And it has a lot of really practical tips for people that have to sit in their workspace on how you can make it a more active workspace, even in the event that your employer won't fork over, a few $100s for a standing desk. So you might want to check that out.
Oh yeah, 50 to 60 hours a week. Brian, I totally feel your pain. Yeah, it's hard. As someone who is terrible at accounting, though, I appreciate what you do for people like me. So thanks for doing that.
Thanks, Brian. I think as we wrap that up, I mean, that's a great point to kind of end things on is what Brian alluded to, right? We're all busy adults. None of us are professional runners where this is our job and this is our livelihood. Some of us are working 50, 60 plus hours a week. And on top of that, we have families and we have social expectations and we have training for the marathon. So every run has a purpose. Every strength movement, every strength routine, every warm up, every cool down has a purpose. So be purposeful with all of your activities. And again, if you have to cut a run short because of time, so be it. The thing that counts is that you're showing up every day and you're getting the majority of your work in. So if you are showing up every day and you're giving it your best effort and you're doing the work for the most part, then you're well ahead of the game, because we're all kind of in this together, right? So if you guys have questions or comments that you maybe aren't thinking of now and you want to ask at a later time, you've got Denise's contact information there. And of course, you've got my contact information. So I'm happy to connect you with Denise as well. And so look, we've got people on here that are trying to on the offer. Chris, it looks like Chris is making a job offer to Brian there. So very good. I think that's a great place to stop, guys. So, hey, thanks Denise so much for sharing your expertise. And again, Denise is a fantastic resource, not only here in the Chicagoland area, but across the country through her virtual offerings as well. So, Denise, thank you for showing up tonight. And
Well, thanks for having me and good luck to everybody. I'm so impressed that you guys are doing this for your various charities and your local towns, and just the dedication that you guys have to this is very impressive and very inspiring. So keep it up, and we are rooting for you. So good job. All
absolutely. Well, thanks, guys. Take care, and we'll see you out on the running path.
right. Thanks, Seth.
Bye bye.